If you were to examine the table of boxing champions by country, you'd notice something interesting. No, not them. The second place ranking, Mexico. A breeding ground for exciting pressure fighters, renowned for their exceptional durability, unwavering heart, whilst delivering painful blows to the body of opponents. As a boxer, if you enter the ring with a Mexican, you know you are set for a bitter war of attrition. Yet the conveyor belt of world-famous champions on the professional stage has failed to translate to the amateur one. The table detailing the number of boxing medals at the Olympic Games makes for miserable reading, from a Mexican standpoint at least. With just 2 golds, 3 silvers and 8 bronzes, Mexico sits in 26th place. To put this into perspective, a country of 127 million people with extensive boxing heritage and prestige sits below East Germany and Yugoslavia, which don't even exist anymore. How has this happened? Is the Mexican amateur system just extremely lackluster, or does something more sinister lurk beneath the surface? Before anything else, let's explore the history of Mexican boxing, and please remember to like and subscribe, it means the most. The exact origins of Mexican boxing are hard to trace, but the sport emerged in the wake of Mexico's revolution around early 1917, with the Mexican government regularly using sports to promote the country's stability. In February 1933, Mexico hailed their first homegrown champion, Battling Shaw. By the 1960s, Mexico was becoming renowned as a boxing giant on the global stage, having co-founded the World Boxing Council whilst exporting champions like Sugar Ramos, Vicente Saldivar and Jose Napoles. The 70s saw a flurry of capable brawlers, most notably Miguel Canto, Pepino Cuevas and Salvador Sanchez, but I feel the 80s truly propelled the Mexico style of boxing to the forefront of fight fans' minds, with the arrival of Julio Cesar Chavez. I simply cannot describe how sensational this man was, and his record truly speaks for itself. The 90s saw a myriad of skilled boxers, including Ricardo Lopez, Oscar De La Hoya, Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales, and the list goes on. The 2000s and 2010s saw an astounding number of champions, but honourable mentions go to Canelo, Leo Santa Cruz, and Antonio Margarito.
Just kidding.
Now that we've established the sheer number of iconic Mexican fighters, in my mind at least, it seems even more bizarre that the medal total is so low. So what exactly is going on?
Para los camiones y, o sea, me ayudaba. Jamás llegó, jamás. Nunca recibí un solo centavo. Se lo robaron.
The Mexican government has been historically plagued by corruption scandals, with the country ranking 126th out of 180 countries in the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, literally on the same level as Niger and Uzbekistan. Therefore, it isn't really surprising that dedicated government aid rarely makes it to the athletes and their dedicated organisations. In my view, this funding is very important, not only in allowing athletes to sustain themselves whilst training, but it's essential pay for the top coaches and requisite facilities. The necessity is perhaps best underlined by Britain's Olympic transformation, which I previously made a video on if you're interested, link is below. But ultimately, Britain pumped $6 million into its Olympic sporting programme in the lead up to Atlanta 1996, which resulted in it coming 36th in the medal table. After years of increased state funding through the National Lottery, Britain ended up finishing second in the medal table at Rio 2016. Money talks, and unfortunately, the Mexican government routinely fails to back its boxers, it seems.
Y esto y el otro, yo no sufrí. Obviamente no tenía muchas cosas.
Never forgot what he might have been if it hadn't been for his success at boxing, because he might have been one of those field workers working under a scorching sun in a blistering heat. Every morning he would run by them as if to remind himself that this was what he might have been.
Historically, many of the greatest boxers coming out of Mexico have been from highly impoverished backgrounds. Julio Cesar Chavez was brought up in a literal abandoned railroad car with his 5 sisters and 4 brothers. In absence of government funding and without any financial backing from home, the amateur route just isn't feasible for these fighters, often putting the Olympic road out of reach. Only by turning professional and selling out arenas can these boxers make their fortunes and bring their families out of poverty. This is especially showcased by the extremely early ages at which many great Mexican fighters turn pro. With Canelo, Barrera and Salido turning professional at just 15, while Salvador Sanchez made the transition at 16, having allegedly only had 4 amateur fights prior.
Stop the cap!
Chavez, Morales and Olivares all took the plunge at just 17. Often these fighters can't prolong their amateur career to feature in the Olympics, meaning Mexico's top talent avoids the games entirely. Consequently, the majority of Mexican fighters we see at the Olympics are second tier at best, and this feeds into my next point. Point scoring. Throughout Olympic history, the bouts have been scored based upon the amount of hits landed on the opponent's head or torso. If there isn't a knockout, then this simple system determines the outcome, granted it is often based on the judges' subjective views.
Well, what about when you heard that the decision was 3-2? What could I do?
And with headgear being compulsory at the Olympics between 1984 and 2012, knockouts were far less likely. Now, although the Mexican style is highly entertaining, I don't feel it translates well to this old point scoring system. They're naturally brawlers, so they accept punishment before administering return hits, sometimes labelled as a take 2 to get 1 approach. Comparative to the Soviets' pendulum step style or the Cubans' ridiculous defensive maneuvers through flashy footwork, Mexico's style just isn't too compatible with this system, especially amongst the second tier Mexican amateurs, who aren't as good defensively. Despite the 10-point must system being implemented since 2016, making the scoring more similar to the pros, it has still only yielded 1 bronze for the country. Fighting on the inside just isn't favourable in this format. Finally, I feel Cuba represents a useful case study as it utterly contrasts Mexico in a boxing sense. In 1962, Cuban leader Fidel Castro banned Cuban fighters from cashing in on prize fights, essentially meaning they couldn't go pro. Castro ensured the nation's athletes were only focused upon Olympic and amateur contests. On the surface, this decision may seem incredibly mad and harsh on the fighters, depriving them of perhaps millions of dollars and worldwide fame. But at least Fidel Castro had sound logic. Bloody hell, he's hit the nail on the head really. Anyway, Cuban boxing has largely evolved out of the Olympic point scoring system, making it an excellent means of gaining valuable hits and remaining untouched. Mexican boxing, on the other hand, has never really adapted to the Olympics, instead seeking to entertain by drawing in crowds and generating revenue. And historically, when matched up at the Olympics, one style has proceeded to dominate despite the disparity in population sizes and overall talent pool. I feel the economic side certainly can't be overlooked, and we do see Mexicans turn pro insanely early. But is there anything else stunting the overall progression? Keep your eyes out for another Olympic-based video in the coming weeks, and please consider liking and subscribing. Now, I made this video to underline my own opinion on the topic, but I really want to hear what you guys think. Did I miss anything key regarding why Mexico has failed to make an impact at the Olympic Games? Also, a quick shout out to Jimmy for editing this absolute monstrosity of a video. Appreciate it, brother. Now, see you guys in the next one. Cheers.